Hi, and welcome to the Rod Kirby Show, the show and podcast that covers the ever-expanding world of film and entertainment. Today I'm chatting with writer, actress, and filmmaker Brandi Nicole Payne. Brandi wrote and produced Muted, starring Grey's Anatomy veteran Chandra Wilson. The critically acclaimed short film is currently featured on Issa Rae's YouTube series, Short Film Sundays. She also directed the inspiring short film Aloha and recently wrapped production on Spin, a film about intimate partner violence. Join us as we discuss her journey as she navigates Hollywood writers' rooms, how she connects her personal experiences to the story she tells, and much more on this episode of The Rod Kirby Show. Hello and welcome to The Rod Kirby Show. I'm your host, Rod Kirby, and today, my friends, is a very special day. Today we have my good friend, author and writer. She's going to be an author one day. She's got a lot of stories to tell. So she's a writer, she's a filmmaker, she's also a producer, and so much more. A mommy, and she's also an activist and some other stuff in there. Miss Brandi Nicole Payne. Brandi, how you doing, lady?
Hi, Rod. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Would you like me adding another hyphenate to your title?
Yeah. I was like author, not quite yet, but yeah, one day, maybe, hopefully.
I mean, as much as you write, I'm sure you got a lot of stories that you wouldn't mind putting into a book form. Now, would you?
That's very true. That is definitely on the horizon one day.
So, what's going on with you? What's new? What's shaking? What's popping?
Oh, what's shaking is I just made my third short film last weekend. Yes. It's called Spin, and it was an incredible shoot, and I am still recovering from it, but it was awesome.
Well, let's talk about that. Spin is your third short film, and this is one that you've directed, right?
Yeah, so it's my third time producing and my second time directing, and this time I co-directed with a good friend of mine named Jen West, who is a director in her own right.
Nice. Okay, well, tell you what, I've got a little slideshow for you. Let's take a look at some behind-the-scenes pictures from Spin from last weekend, and why don't you tell us all about the project, okay?
Great.
All right, so here is Spin, and this was shot in Atlanta, I think?
It was, yeah, Atlanta, Georgia.
So what's it all about?
Sure. So Spin is about this baker named Joy, who has a run-in with a past love. And when she has this run-in, it forces her to kind of wrestle with some hard moments between the two of them and sort of come to a realization of boundaries that were crossed and sort of put a name on things that we don't always talk about.
Oh, wow. That sounds awesome. Now, how did this project come about? I mean, have you been working on it for a while?
I have, actually. We were planning to shoot this last year. I remember we were going to shoot it Memorial Day weekend of 2020. In March, we were like setting things into motion. And literally while I was in Atlanta at one of the, at the time, locations, having a producers meeting, like the next day, everything, like the NBA shut down. And then when the NBA shut down, it was like, wait, what is happening? And then my trip was cut short and I returned home immediately and we put it on pause. We actually thought it wasn't going to happen. And thankfully now we were able to bring it back and shoot last weekend. But it's been a journey. It's been a journey and it almost did not happen.
Wow. And, filmmaking in general is a journey. You never know how things are going to come together. I'm so glad it actually worked out for you and you're finally able to get to the project. That kind of happened with my project with The Prayer, which you were a part of. Thank you so much for being a part of that. We financed and did a crowdfunding campaign, and then everything shut down and we had to delay. And we finally got a chance to shoot it last year and then finished up this year. So yeah, filmmaking is definitely a journey.
It's a journey, and there are you get thrown some loops that you don't expect, which we absolutely did. But then it also makes it so much sweeter when you're able to come out of that and have a finished product, which we're just starting post next week, so we're not quite there. But just the fact that we were able to shoot after between the pandemic. So basically, let me kind of take it back. So Spin's original budget was somewhere around $25,000 because of the locations, the production design, just some of these elements that we knew we were going to need to give it the look that I wanted it to have. And so the original goal, because this is a project that's about intimate partner violence, and so the original goal because of that was, okay, we're going to crowdfund and we're going to reach out to some granting organizations because because it's tied to this cause. We should be able to raise funds from grantors and things like that. And then when the pandemic hit, that changed everything, because then a lot of these organizations either were shut down completely, or they were just trying to keep the lights on, and trying to make sure their staff could have some sort of living, which I completely understood. But as a result, then it was like, oh, well, if our budget is going to be this high, we can't rely on these organizations to like cover all of this, because it's likely not going to happen. And so at that point I said, well, I changed my sort of focus and really spent a lot of my time developing the feature. And I got to a point where I was like, well, I'm just not going to make the short, because I don't have $25,000 lying around. I don't have because of the pandemic and all of the, COVID deaths and people we knew who got COVID, who died from COVID, and like unemployment. It just was like, I don't even have the headspace to crowdfund. So I was it just wasn't going to happen. And then a good friend of mine, his name is Anthony J. Davis. He was my line producer for my last film, Aloha. He's based in Atlanta. He was like, okay, how low of a budget do you think you could make this for? And I was like, if we change a lot, pare things down, which we did, then maybe I can make it for 10,000. And he was like, okay, if you can make it for 10,000, I'll put in 5.
Wow.
And I was, and so with him doing that, then it was like, you can't walk away from $5,000. Like you got to do it now. You got to do it. And again, we had worked together before, so he knew my work ethic, I knew his, and so then that was like a shot in the arm, a revitalization. And I was like, okay, how can we do this? And so then in my mind, it was like, I was telling everyone, okay, we're making the short, we're making it for $10,000, and we're going to figure it out. And we slowly started to, as you know, when you're making a film, you have to hire, different, not just the cast, but like the crew to really sort of execute the vision that you set forth. And so Jen, my co-director, she is a good friend of mine. Like I said earlier, she is a director in her own right. And one of the reasons why I brought her on is because this story, this it's a psychological drama, and it has hints of it has like, I won't even say a thriller. The feature is certainly a thriller, but the short has hints of that in certain places. And her background, she's done work sort of in that vein. So I knew she thinks a lot more visually than I do. And so I knew between the two of us, we'd be able to get this to where I was hoping it would be. And thankfully she said yes. And so we had Anthony as the EP, and then Jen as the co-director. And from there we were like off to the ground running.
And intimacy partner violence, can you kind of break that down in my mind, it makes sense. It's kind of self-explanatory, but I really want people to understand what that is and how to recognize it and possibly in their own relationships, and why this is so important of a subject for you to tackle in this film.
Sure. So intimate partner violence is basically any sort of violence that's done to a person by their partner, whether that's a spouse, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, maybe there's not a label, situationship, whatever, but someone who you are intimate with in some way, and they are abusing you, whether that be physical, sexual, emotional, in some cases financial.
Right.
Oftentimes psychological, and many times it's a combination of all of these that sort of compounds things.
Yeah.
And so you know, it's a complicated world,
Yeah.
because when you think of a partner, you think of someone who, again, even if you don't have a label, this is someone you care about. This is someone who claims to care about you. And so when some sort of abuse occurs, it's very jarring and it's very confusing.
Right.
And you don't, you know, it's different if someone physically hits you.
Yeah.
Like, we know that is, and don't get me wrong, I want to be very clear, that is still also confusing. You know, that's also still a very complicated thing. But with these other forms of abuse, it is not so clear cut that that's what it is, because it's like, oh, this person hasn't hit me. So I don't know, maybe this is just, I don't know what's happening. And that's where sort of the gaslighting comes in. And so it can be very, it's almost like something you get entangled in, and it's hard to see your way out.
Right.
And that's what this short film kind of captures a moment of that.
Awesome. Wow. So let's go back to kind of the beginning of your journey as a filmmaker and as a writer and director. When did you get bit by the entertainment bug?
Oh man, I got bit by that really early. Like, I was probably 3 or 4. The first time I remember performing was in church, doing Christmas plays and singing solos. Like, honestly, there are some Christmas play songs, like Bible story songs, that I still remember the lyrics to. I still love them so much, and I wish I knew like what the names of the plays were, because I would love to download it on Spotify, because it's such a it just fills me with nostalgia. And literally, that was like ages 3 or 4, and just performing in church, and like, oh, this is fun. And then from there, going to school, and like I was always in the school plays. I was Belle as I think I was in 4th or 5th grade. And it was, and my little 4th, 5th grade boyfriend, I still remember his name was Brian, and he had to like kiss me on the hand, and it was such a scandal that like, I know it was, we were Beauty and the Beast. It was really, really fun. So I've always wanted to perform.
And I know you also were part of the HBO Writers Program, starting off.
Yes.
So going from, I mean, of course, acting in school plays, and then starting off, getting into screenwriting and all that. How did you make that transition? How did those building blocks come into play?
Sure.
To where you are now?
Sure. So, theater was my first love. I was a theater major in high school and in college, and I thought I was going to go to New York and be a Broadway performer. That was the dream.
Okay.
And then my senior year, 2 things happened. One is right before my senior year, my grandmother took me to New York as a trip, just her and I. And while I loved it and I got to see my first Broadway show, I also had a lot of anxiety because it was so fast. I was a California girl, and then I went to college in Houston. So still, both of them are kind of like laid back places. And New York was pushing not that. Yes. And we just happened to go during the summer of the blackout, and where everyone was like, "Is this a terrorist attack?" And it was hot, and I was just like, I don't know about this. So that was one thing. And then I also ended up getting pregnant. And once I got pregnant and I had my oldest son, I knew that like being a single mom in New York was just not gonna happen. So then it was like, okay, well then it's LA, because I still wanted to act. And so ended up moving to LA, was doing auditions, but the auditions weren't that great, to be honest. Every once in a while it'd be something nice, but for the most part, not really. So I decided to write. And I focused on writing what I knew. The very first thing I wrote was a pretty terrible but very fun web series called Diary of a Wedding Planner, because I used to be a wedding planner. And so that was the first time like creating my own work. And that really was the bug. That was very similar to the bug that I had as a kid of performing. It was like, ooh, I can create a world and I get to like put all the pieces together and find the actors, or a casting director to help us find the actors and like make this work. I want to do this. And that was sort of the beginning of a shift. From there, I ended up writing a short film called Muted. which ended up starring Chandra Wilson and
Grey's
Malcolm Jamal
Anatomy.
Warner from Grey's Anatomy, who was phenomenal. And in doing that and seeing all the wonderful things that came out of making that short film, that's when I really was like, okay, I actually do need to give more time to writing and kind of see what doors it opens up for me.
Well, let's talk about Muted. And matter of fact, for people that haven't seen it, I watched it recently, and blown away by the acting, by the writing, the direction, and absolutely phenomenal short film.
You.
It's on Issa Rae's platform on YouTube right now.
It
so
is.
You can check it out for free. Let's watch the trailer, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Okay. So this is the trailer to Muted.
This is actually Aloha.
This is Aloha. Okay. We're going to act like that didn't happen.
That's great. I was like, oh, this is a different kind of Muted. What is this?
Okay, let's take that back, and we'll take that from the top. This is why we don't do this live. This is why I record these, so I can go back and put it in the right way.
That's great, though.
So this is your short film, Muted. Let's take a look.
Crystal? Little girl, I'm not playing with you. Don't make me drag your behind from that party tonight.
How about relax? Every kid's got to sneak out at least once.
Sasha's having a very small get-together. Can I go?
Kira! Where's Chris?
She's not here.
If you hear from her, just have her call me.
Unless you want me to be your personal escort. The answer is no. I'll walk. You aren't gonna put out the Amber Alert?
It's only for children that have been abducted. We just don't know that to be the case here.
Kids, they go out drinking and come back home, they're dead between their legs.
Those kids are not my daughter. 5'3", 120 pounds, brown skin.
Need a bit of pressure from the police to get them to do their job.
We need them to be our allies, not our enemies.
We need them to find our daughter.
I know you get a lot of story requests, but this is my child.
All right, Muted. Yeah. That bring back memories?
I was just going to say that is a blast from the past. Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
What was it like working with Chandra and Malcolm Jamal Warner on that project, acting beside those two great actors?
Honestly, that was a gift because they were, I mean, we know how talented they are.
Yeah.
So that goes without saying, but they were also just really professional and really, really accommodating. Like this was a short film, not a lot of money. This was a short film.
Yeah.
and so, what we could offer is like a drop in the bucket compared to what they'd get on the bigger projects that they both work on. But they never once made us feel like they were doing us a favor, which was such a good lesson because there were other people who absolutely did, who were not to the stature that they were. Yeah. And so it was a really good lesson for me to like surround myself with people, with this project, I actually told people like I'd rather have someone who is less experienced, but hungry and dedicated to the mission of the work than someone who is super experienced or super talented, but like I have a feeling there's something inside of me that's saying, I don't know. I don't know if they really want this. I don't know if they, they kind of like, they're treating it as if they're doing us a favor versus treating it as I am a part of the team and I'm excited to contribute my part. So it was a lot of good lessons on that film.
I had someone recently tell me, there's a DP that told me, asked him if he wanted to be a part of the project, and the project is so, I'm going to say it's so good. Okay. I'm going to say it's so good and it's so meaningful that anyone would really, when they see it, I'm sure they'll be like, oh, this is important and this is timely. Okay. Yeah. And this guy told me, I can DP it for you. I only work with projects that have a director, AD, a grip, and this and that. I said, oh, you only work with, okay. Well, I mean, I expected more of a wow, this is really important. This could really change things for people.
Yeah.
That I got a kind of holier than thou top button tie type of.
Yeah, and oh man, and that's hard because like to me, what that suggests is that maybe he's been burned on a project before, but there is a way to communicate that.
Right.
That doesn't rub people off, because I will say, like, even with Muted, I remember our line producer, Tina Pavlidis, who really saved us, because this was me and my friend Tara Tomicevic produced it together, and it was our first time producing something of that magnitude.
Yeah.
But we didn't know what we were doing, and Tina really, really saved us. But there were quite a few times where she would have to say, like, okay, based off of what you're saying you want to get it to the level that you want, you're going to need these things. And we'd be like, Tina, we don't have the money for that. Tina, we don't have the money for that. And she'd be like, okay, and that's fine. So if we're going to cut some things, that's fine. I just want to make sure you understand that means that we won't have the level of production that you're saying that you want the ultimate outcome to be. And it was just, and again, lessons, because there is a way to communicate that, like, you're going to need these things in order to get whatever it is that you're going for, without being like, this is my line in the sand, because that to me, that just conjures up whoever the supermodel was that said, like, I don't get out of bed for less than $10,000 a day. Like, there's a way to communicate your needs. And that was not the way.
That's not the way. And there are so many people, like you said, that are willing to work with you based on the project, based on what the project would do for other people.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And also based on you and your history, and that are hungry and want to do the work, not just want to do it for a little money or what have you. So also I want to ask you about your director of Muted. I mean, she's a powerhouse.
Rachel
right?
Goldberg.
Yes,
she did a great job.
How did you meet her? Are you friends, or how did that come about?
We so Tara and I, at the time, neither one of us wanted to direct. Now it's a little bit different, because Tara is somewhat interested in episodic directing, and clearly I'm interested in indie directing if it's something that I've written.
Right.
But at the time, neither of us had, less than zero interest. So we just put out a call. We put out a call on a couple of different industry message boards looking for a director for hire. Yeah. And it came down to her and two other people. And then ultimately we went with her. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, she's done a lot of great stuff, since then. And of course, before then, I absolutely love the exposure and the work that, female directors are getting nowadays. Yeah. I really wish it wasn't like that. I really wish that female directors and producers were on equal footing with everyone else, and they have always been getting.
That would be nice.
That would be nice. That's the industry we're in, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's nice that things are starting to change. Certainly not fast enough when you think about the fact that we're half the population, might be over half the population. I don't remember if we're 51% now or whatever it is, but I am glad that there is more of an effort, because it certainly, the numbers need to change.
Absolutely. And to give you an example, Watch Mojo on YouTube, I think they have a list video where they're listing the greatest directors of all time. It's probably like one or two females on that list. Everybody else is just a bunch of white guys.
Yeah, because historically they have been the ones that have been able to do this. So yeah, we'll get there
eventually. That's why I'm grateful for producers like Tyler Perry that are kind of opening doors to other people, and other people in the indie on the indie scene that are just doing it themselves and getting the recognition that they deserve, especially on like shows like Queen Sugar, where they have all female cast and all female crew, and producers. That's it's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Let's go to Aloha, which was your second short film that you directed. Tell me about that project. How did that come about?
Aloha. Yeah. So Aloha was my second short that I produced, and it was the first one I directed. And it's it came about because of, it was sort of a two-pronged thing. On the one hand, I had seen on Facebook one day these very haunting images of these parents in a hospital with their newborn baby. And come to find out that the baby had passed, and they were taking these pictures to like treasure the time that they had with this baby. But my instant reaction was like, that's private. Why are they sharing this? You know, I was just like, whoa. But it stuck with me because it was beautiful photography, but it was very haunting and it stuck with me. And then a few years later, maybe like 2 years later, I was pregnant with my third child. And I had what was known as, I developed HELP syndrome, which is basically like my body was going haywire. It's preeclampsia. I had to deliver him early, but I also couldn't get an epidural because my blood wasn't clotting. It was very scary. And as a result, he ended up staying in the NICU for about a month. Thankfully, there were no problems. And he was able to come home a month later. But that experience was incredibly just unexpected and like ground shaking. And it reminded me of those pictures. It reminded me of those pictures and just how things can change in a moment when you are pregnant for both mother and baby. And that just started percolating in my mind, and I ended up writing Aloha.
My wife and I went through not the same situation, but a similar situation where we had to deliver early, and it was just as scary, not knowing whether this little bundle of joy was going to make it. And, fortunately he's doing well for us. And I'm glad that was your son or your daughter?
That was my son.
That was your son. I'm glad he's doing good.
Thank you.
He's pretty tall now, right?
Yeah, he is just fine.
Well, let's take a look at the trailer for Aloha, and then we can kind of talk about it a little bit more after that. Okay.
Great.
So here is Aloha.
Today I went on a mission. Operation Buy Awesome Baby announcement.
I just don't think it's necessary. I've never even heard of this.
It does feel a little invasive.
I agree. Only family should be here right now.
I don't feel like a mom.
I think the 8 hours you spent in labor would beg to differ. Just don't think we need to spend on expensive cards to prove it.
Is this your first? How can you tell? Well, it's generally the rookies that put this much thought into it. I think about my mom or my grandma or even my mom friends. I don't see myself in that club.
She's here. Come here, good.
Oh, thank God.
All right, Aloha. Yes. Yeah, I watched it last weekend or the weekend before last, and it was such a sweet story. I loved it.
Thank you.
Yeah, really loved it. And that's one thing I love about your work is that it's so personal. And, in general, filmmaking is always personal, but, you are not afraid to go there, to those places and really share a piece of you in everything that you work on. Is that scary to you when you write? Do you say to yourself, I don't really know if I want to put this out there, but
yes.
I got to.
Yes. It's first of all, thank you for sharing that trailer because I love that song so much. Our composer Kennedy, he's a Black man out of the Bay, and like we called that Bailey's song, and it just Bailey was the name of the baby. And every time I hear that song, it just makes me smile. It's so beautiful.
It is.
Thank you. But yeah, every time I write something personal, which generally is what I write, there's absolutely a part of me that is hesitant. And when I first start writing, it feels fine because because no one's seeing it. And so it's almost like journaling. It's just for me. And then maybe for my friends to see and give me notes on. It's really at the moment where like I'm going to start sharing it like with my writers group.
Yeah.
Or then especially if it's going to get sent out, whether that's to a competition or to whoever to read, that's when I'm like, because then by that point, you know, like the first draft, I don't usually go there. The first draft is usually just like I'm touching on surface stuff.
Right.
And then by the time I get to like draft 3 or 4, there is some stuff in the scripts that are like, ooh, yeah. So, but with each script, I learn to embrace truth more. And once you start doing that, which I learned to do in therapy, you know, once you start telling the truth, first of all, to yourself, you stop deluding yourself about whatever it may be. That makes it easier to then speak the truth or write the truth to others and to share it with others. And even though the response is not always necessarily what you would hope for, it resonates. One way or another, it resonates and it's truthful. And really, that's all I care about.
Yeah, and especially with what you said on the resonating people, we all go through the same experiences throughout life, you know, and when you put that into a story or a project or a film, people cling on to that, and that just makes it, you know, better for them. That makes it more real for them and more entertaining when they can see and they can relate to you what's going on screen. It just makes it better overall. And I think I've learned to kind of do the same thing and say, okay, this is what happened. We're going to put this in the story. You know, it's going to make it 10 times better. It's going to be a little hurtful, a little painful for people to hear it and think that, and they can think whatever they want. But we're going to do it. And I put the foot forward and we move forward. That's
exactly it. You cannot control how people are going to react, how they're going to feel, what they're going to think. You just can't. So you have to learn to let that go, and just to remember that, like, just like a visual piece of art, that it is just our job to put it out there and to be honest and truthful, and then it's up to the viewer or the audience to receive it however they receive it. But as long as I'm being authentic in what I'm sharing, then I've done my job.
That's why I'm looking forward to Spin, because I know it's a personal project for you, and I know that you're going to share your truth and show us something brand new, in your life as well. What was the most challenging aspect of production for you? Was it the emotional aspect of the subject matter, or was it the actual production and logistics of that? What was the absolute hardest thing to do on that film?
I'm laughing because I'm thinking of the night before the shoot. And I am the type of person who, like, I like live in the future. I love thinking about future things. Yeah. I love Christmas Eve. That's like my favorite day of the year, because I'm just like, Christmas is tomorrow. So that's how I feel the night before production, is like, oh, I'm so excited. But I will say, by the time nighttime came, I was fine. But production Eve day, I was not happy. I was not happy. We had lost. First we lost an extra, and which doesn't sound like a huge thing, but keep in mind, because of COVID and all, everything is very pared down. So any extras that we have are really intentional. So we lost an extra due to COVID, being testing COVID positive, because everybody had to test. Even if you were vaccinated, you had to test, especially because of this Delta variant. So due to being COVID positive, first we lost an extra. Like, okay, we can just, we can grab someone from the crew because they're going to already be tested. Because at this point, we can't just find, in other films, you could just call a friend and be like, can you do this? But no, because you have to be tested and all that. So we're like, okay, we'll grab a crew member. Then got a call from our BTS and stills photographer. She is sick, not COVID positive, but has some sort of strep throat thing, and it's like, it's not good. So we got to find somebody else. And we were like, okay, that's not too terrible. We can maybe find one photographer for Saturday and a different photographer for Sunday. Let's reach out to our networks. The main thing is we need to find someone immediately for tomorrow, because they got to get tested. then we also then we got a call from our first AD, and that was very hard for me because this particular person had gotten tested the Friday before and thought that test was going to be sufficient for our shoot, but it had been a whole week since. And he had been in a production with these other people. So we were like, no, we need people to get tested the week of. And so, you got to get another test. And for whatever reason, which I still don't understand, he wouldn't get a test the same day because we were like, okay, just get a test today, get a rapid test. It's not as great as the ones that's like 2 or 3 days, but at least get a rapid test and we can like keep it moving. And he was like, well, there are no rapid tests in my area. I was even like, I said, listen, I will reimburse you the gas if you need to, if it's like $40 to from wherever you are, because I know that there are places that are still doing rapid tests today because there were a couple other people who we were like, listen, if we don't have your test, you can't be on set. Right. And but for whatever reason, I stopped trying to figure it out because he was like, well, I don't want to take the money from you and And so at some point,
just excuses.
Yeah, and I didn't understand it. So at that point, I was just like, okay, you know what? I appreciate having you on the team until now. And, obviously this is where we had to part ways. And he did say, you guys have run such a well-oiled machine up until now. I know you'll be fine, which for the first day was absolutely true. But for that second day, we needed an AD. We really did. Like everyone kind of became an AD and was mindful of time, but it would have been nice to have just been able to focus on our roles as the director and performer versus also in the back of my head, like, what shot do I need to cut in order to make our day? You know what I mean? What are which we had to come up with the plan the night before of like, what are the anchor shots that like I must have no matter what? Right. And then even still on the day of, there was one shot that we all thought we weren't going to be able to get. And our scripty, James Martin, was able to come up with a way for us to get it and still make our day, which I am forever grateful to him for, because he especially really became sort of like our AD on set. But there was still one more thing. It was just like a day of like compounding things. The actress who plays the one minor that we have on set, she's a child actress, Aria Pulliam. She's adorable. And her audition was great, and her callback was even better. And I just, from the moment that I saw her on screen, but then especially meeting her in the callback, I was just like, she's wonderful. Her mother called me while I was in Target getting like some last minute things for wardrobe. Right. And she was like, Brandi, I didn't know who else to call. Aria has had an accident. And I was like, oh my God, is she okay? Because I'm thinking car accident or something. She's like, no, she's totally fine. She's in good spirits. Her energy's up. But she scraped her face. And I was like, oh, okay, we can
makeup, good.
Yeah, makeup, yeah. And she was like, no, it's really bad. And I was like, okay. I was like, all right, well, she was like, I'll send you a picture. And I was like, yeah, go ahead and send me a picture. We will figure this out. But I'm glad that she's okay. Yeah. And that not only was she okay, she still wanted to do it because, I think about my kids, especially my 7-year-old. I think he'd be like, I'm not doing anything. I'm eating ice cream in bed and that's it. So I was like, okay. Like a few minutes later, she sent me that picture and my heart just dropped because her face was so scarred that I was like, oh, this was a real accident. Great. This is like a real accident. Yeah. And it was just so much that I wasn't even sure if makeup, like I didn't want her to get infected because I was like, this is like raw skin. Ooh. And so at that point, me and Jen went into brainstorm mode. I was on my way back to Jen's Airbnb behind her house. And by then Miguel, my co-star, was there and we all were like coming up with a fix because I was like, I said, at this point, we're gonna have to write this into the script.
Yeah.
There's no way to sort of get around this. And so I was like, okay. Originally in the script, we're at this bakery, and she comes to this bakery as a treat for being her first day of kindergarten, getting through it. And so we ended up changing it. And this was the reasoning was Miguel's idea. He was like, what if it's just like, I took the training wheels off too early because he played her dad. And I was like, that works. Let's do it. and so by that time, because that was the last like piece of like what felt like the never ending day of things falling apart. Yeah. But by that time, once we figured that out, then I was like, okay, things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
Things are going to be okay.
And it's always like that. I mean, on every production, you're always going to find there's going to be either one thing or multiple things that come up unexpectedly. And that's what filmmaking is all about. It's all about problem solving. You know?
That's exactly what it is. Problem solving, being able to pivot really quickly, being able to do so in a way where you're not blowing up at people.
Yeah.
Where you're really just trying to like find solutions. Which is why I have to say, to like all of our credit, we were so prepared that we did not crumble when these things happen. Because I definitely felt myself like getting there, like being like, what is happening? But everybody was just ready to come up with ways to help, with ways to figure it out and get it done. And that was wonderful. It really, really was.
That's awesome. I'm really excited to see the finished product. How long do you think post is going to last?
I talked to my editor, Lex, who edited both Muted and Aloha. So I'm glad she was available again. Okay. And we're thinking about 8 weeks. So so sometime early October is when we're estimating picture lock, because we're starting next week, which is exciting.
Yeah.
We're just now like trying to figure out, okay, we got to build a website, and not that every film needs this, but because this, I didn't mention this earlier, but this is a short that is a proof of concept for the feature. We are really trying to build the audience so that hopefully we can have a successful film festival run, so that we can eventually take this to colleges to do college screenings, since that is a huge breeding ground for these types of situations, and then to ultimately hopefully help us to secure money for the feature. So we've got a lot of work on our hands over the next few weeks, but I'm unemployed right now, so this is my job.
You know, I think you are employed. You're employed in, working your dreams full time. That is
very true.
You know, yes. So congratulations on that. I know y'all going to get this money, and you're going to get the financing that you need. You're going to get every resource that you need. I'm speaking right now, and I know that's going to happen for you.
Thank you.
Going back to screenwriting, just real quick. There's a lot of people. First of all, before I even talk about that, kudos to you and your team on truly understanding and knowing that filmmaking is part creative, it's also part business and entrepreneurship, and a lot of people don't really get that. And I see a lot of people, especially around the Memphis area, that have these grand ideas, and they say, yeah, I want to make this, I want to make that. And, they may pick up a camera and do this, and they expect certain things to happen, but it doesn't happen. But you have to understand that you really have to grind, and you really have to put these pieces together to attract investors, to attract an audience, to bring all that stuff to you. So kudos in knowing that. I mean, you only understand that because you've been in the industry and you've been working, and you've seen that stuff behind the scenes. So it's really good. Did you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah. I mean, I would say with each project, you learn something new.
Yeah.
And so honestly, even with this, project, like afterwards, me and Jen, her husband James, who was our scriptie, and then Eva and Bud. Eva was my UPM, and Bud was my swing grip / a few other roles. We all went to this outdoor bar and just like we just chatted. We kind of did like a let's decompress and just sort of talk about how it all went.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great because we talked about, you know, the things that we loved, the moments that we really loved. And then we talked about, okay, what can we do differently specifically for the feature? And so it was actually really nice to have this as kind of like our test run for what are we going to do differently for the feature. And one thing that we really talked about is that, you know, there was a lot of, because again, this is about intimate partner violence. So there were a lot of emotional scenes that had to happen in a very compressed amount of time. And we definitely for the feature want to be able to, like, for those particular scenes, even if it's not a 10-hour day, it might be a 6-hour day. But when we have to do those scenes, let's just do those scenes. Let's just do those scenes, and then let's let the performers rest, because it was very mentally and physically taxing.
And then you had to jump right into another scene.
Oh my gosh, yes. That and to another scene where your mind state was not quite as emotional, which, you know, is a part of acting. But it was such an extreme that it would just be nice to be able to have more time to be able to sort of decompress from that. We did have an intimacy coordinator on set, which is my first time working with one. And that was an experience. First of all, she was really lovely. Her name is Camille Monet. But it was, again, just learning lessons, even just learning from her, some of the things that she said and did. I'm very fascinated by that role and the safety that role provides. But then and also, like, it's sort of a dance, because as a performer, you may want to do something, but you need to make sure your other performer is very comfortable with that, so that you're not violating their boundaries, they're not violating yours. You also want to get the performance that you want on camera. So it's a lot. It is a dance, which is why preparation is sort of key. So anyway, I say all that to say, I'm very excited, first of all, for the world just to see the short. I am equally as excited to embark on the feature. And I'm really glad that there are things that we learned from this project that we can take to help us improve things for the feature. So with every project that you're learning something.
So if you're learning on every project, what has been the biggest takeaway that you've learned? I mean, thus far in your career as a writer, actor, actress, and producer, director, what has been the biggest thing that you've learned that you can pass on to someone else that wants to do the same thing?
You have to make people feel appreciated. Like that's hands down. And yes, sometimes that means money. Sometimes that means in making sure that people not only get the proper credit, but that when you are talking about your project, that you are shouting them out for the work that they did, especially if there's someone behind the scenes that, like, for example, and I haven't mentioned her today, so I will do that now. Lauren Yisrael, who I hope I'm saying her last name correctly, because I usually just say Lauren. She was our production designer. And that production design is not something that that filmmakers always have room in the budget for when you're doing a low budget short film. And I recognize that. And I'm not even saying that every single project needs it. There are some things that maybe you have the perfect location that doesn't need much, and great. But this needed it. And she told me, you know, that she was going to be able to transform, for example, our bakery, the bakery that we used. It's called Say Cheese. It's a gourmet cheesecake shop, and it was already a beautiful venue, but it was more of an event venue, and we really wanted it to be that sold cheesecakes. We really wanted it to be this just bright, airy, beautiful bakery place that, like, when you walk in, if you were a child or a child at heart, you would light up, you know. And she absolutely did that. And and so, and it just wouldn't, you know, the photos, the finished piece, her imprint is on all of that. And so, you know, I definitely shouted her out in all of everything that I posted, because, you know, it just, and she's not the only one. You know, there are so many different people whose work, I'll say Nate Regaud, he was my DP for Aloha. For this, I really wanted a female DP, and there were plenty to choose from that were really talented. And Alexis Jackson is who we ended up hiring. Not only is she a fantastic DP, she's also a cinematography professor at Spelman University in Atlanta. And so there she is right there. So, there's actually both of them. So we hired Alexis as our DP, and Nate came aboard as our gaffer to give me the lighting that we wanted. Yeah. And this is their first time working together. They worked really well together. And I specifically remember, like, there was one, I remember telling Alexis that there was like one particular lighting scheme that when you see the film that I really wanted to have this particular look for. And she was like, okay, let me think about that. And then a couple of days later, she was like, okay, this is what I think we can do. And then she talked to Nate, and then Nate had his input. And then I just remember the day of the shoot on Friday, those lights came on, and I was like, this was the lighting I wanted. I was so happy that they were able to figure it out. And just, man, making your team feel appreciated leads to them wanting to work with you again, and leads to, like, when things are challenging and when there are challenging moments, people are willing to, like, power through that versus blowing up, because they realize and recognize that that they are seen, and that what they are doing is appreciated, and like they're not being taken for granted.
Right.
My biggest takeaway.
Yeah, I think piggyback on what you said, what I've learned is that saying thank you to people on your crew, and saying thank you for the work to the actors. No matter if you liked it or not, you know, it really goes a long way.
Yes.
Just to make people feel appreciated. And then even, working with actors, if you say, okay, that was a good take. Let's try something different. Let's try this. That makes them feel, okay, I didn't correctly hit the mark, but we can figure it out.
But we can figure it out together. And sometimes too, it's like, okay, that was great, but now I just want you to try something totally new, just to have another option. Right. And that helps, just because actors we do want to, like, it's not that we need a pat on the back, but it's like, is this what you like? We do want to please, like, is this what you're going for as a director? Because we do want to give you the vision that you have. And so, of course, this was a little different since having the co-director. So it was more like with Jen, I'd be like, am I getting it? Because we've had multiple conversations about every single scene. So, like, is it translating? Is it showing up the way that we had been talking about? And there were moments where I got to, like, look and peek, where I'd be very, very pleased with what I was seeing. But for the most part, I just, for time, it was like I was going to have to trust that she would keep on rolling takes until we got it.
Yeah. And that's tough to do when you're directing and acting, and depending on a co-director as well. So
you got to have a lot of trust. You really do. Yeah.
Well, speaking of time, we are just about out of time to talk to you, and I really want you to come back so we can talk about screenwriting, like, in depth, on screenwriting. I think what I'm gonna do is have, like, a little round table with a couple other writers, and we can just kind of talk about it. So definitely inviting you to that.
That'd be great.
Brandi, I believe we can find you on Twitter as well as Facebook, and that is at CreativelyB.
Yes, I am more on Instagram than Facebook. Okay. Instagram is, like, my main. Instagram and Twitter, yeah. Okay,
Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, but it's all CreativelyB, right?
On not on Facebook, because I don't want people to find me on Facebook. Okay. Instagram and Twitter. Instagram and Twitter. That's Instagram and Twitter. Yeah.
And check out her link. It's Linktree /CreativelyB for all of her stuff. You can see the trailers for the films that we showed here, as well as follow progress on Spin. Brandi, thank you so much for stopping by and talking to us today. Really do appreciate you hanging out with me today.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And you can also connect with me, Rod Kirby, at www.rodkirby.com, as well as at Rod Kirby on just about all platforms. And just like Brandi, I'm not really on Twitter that much, but you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. But thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you again, Brandi, for joining me as well. And we'll talk to you all soon. Peace out.
Bye.